Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always. What are we getting into today?
Well, today we're going all the way to the Olympic Peninsula. We're talking about the Olympic Marmot.
Oh, cool. I've heard they're pretty unique.
They really are. And our listeners are really curious to learn more about them. These charismatic little guys. Well, not so little, actually. They're these chubby rodents living way up high in the meadows of the Olympics. And get this, they hibernate for, like, most of the year.
Wow, most of the year? Like, how long are we talking?
We're talking serious hibernation. We're talking close to 8 months. Plus, they whistle to talk to each other, hence the nickname whistle pig. And they have these complex social structures. It's fascinating stuff.
Sounds like it. Where are we getting all this info from?
Well, there's this essay that really digs deep into their lives. We'll be pulling from that today to uncover some pretty amazing stuff. We'll be looking at their role in the ecosystem, the challenges they face, the whole 9 yards.
All right, let's dive in.
All right, so first things first. These marmots live in a very specific spot, right?
Yeah, they're found only in the Olympic Peninsula, and even then, you got to go high up to find them. We're talking subalpine and alpine meadows, so above the tree line, usually between 4,000 and 6,000 feet.
Wow, so you wouldn't just stumble upon one on your average hike then?
Not unless you're a serious hiker, no. But if you do make it up there, you'll see why they love it. These meadows are incredible. During the summer, they're just bursting with wildflowers. It's really something else.
It sounds gorgeous. But I can imagine it gets pretty harsh up there too, especially in winter.
Oh, absolutely. Winters are long and brutal at those elevations. Lots of snow, freezing temperatures. But the Olympic marmot is perfectly adapted to survive it all.
And that's where the hibernation comes in, right?
Yeah.
8 months, just try to wrap your head around that for a second. Sleeping away most of the year.
It's incredible, isn't it? They spend the short summer months eating as much as they can, packing on the pounds, and then it's down into the burrow for a long winter's nap.
Talk about making the most of your summer vacation. But it makes you wonder, how do they survive on just those few months of eating?
Well, they've really mastered the art of energy conservation. Their metabolism slows down drastically during hibernation, and they rely on those fat reserves they built up during the summer. It's a pretty amazing adaptation.
It is. And, speaking of their burrows, I read that they're not just for sleeping. They actually play a crucial role in the whole ecosystem.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Their burrows are like these little underground apartments, and they have multiple entrances and chambers.
Fancy. But how do they actually impact the environment? It's just a hole in the ground, right?
Well, think of it this way. All that digging aerates the soil, which is super important for plant growth, especially in those high-altitude meadows where the soil can be pretty compact. So their burrows actually help all those wildflowers and grasses thrive.
So they're like little gardeners in a way.
Exactly. They're creating the perfect conditions for this incredibly diverse ecosystem to flourish.
Fascinating. Okay, so we've talked about their habitat, their epic hibernation skills, and their underground gardening talents. But I have to ask about that nickname, Whistle Pig. Do they actually whistle?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not just a cute name. They communicate with each other through these high-pitched whistles. It's amazing to hear.
I bet. What are they whistling about, though? Just casual chit-chat or something more serious?
Well, they definitely use it for social interactions, but it's mainly an alarm system. They live in these colonies, sometimes with multiple families sharing a network of burrows. So when one marmot spots a predator like a coyote or an eagle, it lets out a piercing whistle to alert the whole colony to take cover.
Makes sense. Safety in numbers, right. It's like their own little neighborhood watch program up there in the meadows.
Exactly. It's a really effective way to protect themselves in such an exposed environment.
And all this while surviving on a diet of plants. What's on the menu for an Olympic marmot?
Yeah, they're strict herbivores. They love all sorts of alpine vegetation, grasses, wildflowers, even succulent roots. They'll eat it all.
Sounds like they have pretty good taste. But their eating habits, that's going to affect the meadows too, right? It's not just about filling their bellies.
You're right. It's not just about them. Their grazing actually stimulates new plant growth. It's like their natural lawnmowers, keeping the meadows healthy and vibrant. And when they dig for roots, they spread seeds and create space for new seedlings to sprout. So they're not just eating the plants, they're helping them thrive too.
It all comes back to that gardening thing. It's amazing how they become such a vital part of that ecosystem.
They really have. But of course, they're not just gardeners, they're also a food source for other animals.
Right, they're part of the food web too. It's not all sunshine and wildflowers up there.
No, sadly not. They're prey for coyotes, golden eagles, bobcats. It can be a pretty tough life.
It makes you wonder what would happen if their numbers started to decline. What would that mean for the balance of the ecosystem? I mean, it's a pretty delicate system up there.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance, and unfortunately, the Olympic marmot is facing some real threats these days.
That's right. Climate change, I imagine, is a big one.
Definitely. The Olympic Peninsula has been experiencing some of the effects of climate change firsthand. Warmer temperatures mean shorter winters, less snowpack, earlier snowmelt. It's all changing, and that directly impacts the marmots and their habitat.
So how exactly does that affect them?
Well, for one thing, their hibernation cycles can get thrown off. If the snow melts earlier, they might wake up sooner, before there's enough food available. And the plants themselves might struggle to thrive in the warmer, drier conditions.
So it's like a domino effect, right? Change one thing and the whole system's affected.
Exactly, it's all interconnected.
And then on top of that, you've got predators moving in, right?
Yeah, that's another big concern. As the climate warms, predators like coyotes are moving to higher elevations, which means more competition for resources and more threats to the marmots.
So all in all, not exactly a rosy picture for the Olympic marmot.
Right.
But are there things being done to help protect them?
There are. There are researchers and park officials in Olympic National Park who are working really hard to monitor the marmot population and understand how these threats are impacting them.
So they're keeping a close eye on things.
Yeah, they're tracking population numbers, studying their behavior, looking at how the vegetation is changing. They're gathering all this data to help inform conservation efforts.
And what about public education? Is there anything being done to get people involved?
Oh, absolutely. Public education is a huge part of conservation. The Park Service has all sorts of programs to teach people about the Olympic marmot and its ecosystem. And there are ways for people to get involved too, like citizen science projects where they can help collect data.
It's so important to get people engaged because really protecting the Olympic marmot is about so much more than just saving one species, right?
Right. It's about protecting that whole unique alpine ecosystem. It's about understanding the interconnectedness of nature and recognizing that even seemingly small actions can have a big impact.
Well, that's a powerful message. I think we've covered a lot of ground today. We've learned about the Olympic marmot's amazing adaptations, its crucial role in the ecosystem, and the very real challenges it faces.
We have. It's been a fascinating dive into their world.
It really has. And it's easy to feel overwhelmed by the problems facing the natural world. But it's also important to remember that there are people out there working tirelessly to protect species like the Olympic marmot and preserve their habitats.
That's right, there's hope. But we all have a role to play.
And that brings us to a question for our listeners. What actions, big or small, can we take to contribute to the conservation of species like the Olympic marmot and ensure a future for all the amazing creatures that share our planet? It's something to think about.
It is. It's a question worth pondering.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll see you next time.
Until then.